Hey, Daily Bible Time, 7 o'clock Wednesday morning, and Dominic Steele here, and we are working on a resume for Jesus. We saw yesterday that his name was Jesus Christ. Well, actually, Jesus is his name, Christ is his title, and Christ means Messiah, or God's King, God's ruler. Now, pick it up with me, Colossians chapter 1 and verse 15. He is the image of the invisible God. Now, that is an amazing statement. Jesus is the image of the invisible God. People sometimes in discussion say, hey, have you ever seen God? How can you know God exists if you've never seen him? Now, there's a couple of ways you could reply to that kind of barb. You could try out, have you ever seen your brain? How do you know your brain exists if you've never seen your brain? Now, there's one line of argument, probably slightly more pastorally appropriate would be, no, I haven't seen God, but I could have if I hadn't turned up late. I mean, if I'd been there at the right time, right place, I could have seen him, because that's it. If you and I had been there on time, first century Palestine, because the people who saw Jesus, they saw the image of the invisible God. They saw God. And if you want to see God today, what do? You look to Jesus. You examine Jesus. You read about Jesus. You get to know Jesus, for Jesus is the image of the invisible God. That's first thing. Next thing on the resume, status. Jesus is firstborn over all creation. Now, this is a little tricky, because you've got to understand firstborn in the same way that ancient family that lives in Buckingham Palace in London understands the word firstborn. Firstborn in the royal family refers not to birth order, but to rank. See, Elizabeth is the Queen of England. Elizabeth marries Prince Philip. They have a son called Charles. Charles becomes the firstborn. Then they have a daughter called Anne. Charles is the firstborn. Anne becomes the secondborn. Then they have a son called Andrew. Charles is the firstborn, and because of the system under which the royal family has traditionally operated at the time, Charles is the firstborn, Andrew becomes the secondborn, and Anne becomes the thirdborn. Then they have another son called Edward. Charles is the firstborn, Andrew is the secondborn, Edward becomes the thirdborn, and Anne, because of the particular system which I'm not going to defend, Anne becomes the, fourthborn. Then, 1981, Charles marries Di. Camilla's off on the side. We won't dwell on that point, though. And then Charles and Di have a son called William. Charles is the firstborn. William becomes the secondborn. Andrew is the thirdborn. Edward is the fourthborn. And Anne becomes the fifthborn. Now, you see what's happening? Then Charles and Diana have Harry. Charles is the firstborn. William is the secondborn. Harry is the thirdborn. Andrew is the fourthborn. Edward is the sixthborn. And Anne becomes the seventhborn. Now, firstborn doesn't actually mean, of course, actually then William and Kate, they have George. Charles is the firstborn, William is the secondborn, George becomes the thirdborn, and everybody moves down the rank again. And Harry gets kind of moved out of the succession line, another step, which is probably a relief. Firstborn is not about who is oldest. Now, it's not my family, it's not the way we do it. Firstborn has got to do with rank. It's got to do with who will be the ruler, who will be preeminent, who will be in charge, who will inherit all the Father's property, who will be supreme, who will be king. And what sentence 15 of Colossians 1 is saying is that Jesus is the image of the invisible God, and Jesus is firstborn over all creation, king over all creation, ruler over all creation. More tomorrow on Daily Bible Time as we explore this resume for Jesus from Colossians 1 together.